Okay, my name is Yost, Larry Yost, Y-O-S-T. Moved here in, I think, 1942, late 1942, early 43 with my family, which consists of mother, father, and one brother, Paul. He was a year older than I and 2 years later in school. I think he started school here at St. Pete High as a freshman. I started at, I think in the 7th grade at Diston Junior High, which no longer exists. It was South 49th Street, 7th and 8th grade. I spent 7th and 8th grade at Diston and freshman and sophomore years at St. Pete High. My father was United States Air Force, transferred here from, I think at the time we were in Springfield, Massachusetts, hadn't been there long, transferred to MacDill, and we moved here to the beach, and he commuted across the old Gandy Bridge, which is a story in itself. At that time, the Gandy Bridge was 2-lane, brick surface with a railroad track running down the middle. And it was very difficult to go across it in good weather. In bad weather, it was a nightmare because the railroad tracks were still there. The railroad tracks started where the bridge started, ended where the bridge ended. And Gandy had to put it there in the event the troops needed to be moved. They could complete it from both ends and run rail cars. But it was a nightmare to drive that bridge in slick weather on and off those tracks. I remember he used to commute with a group of other Air Force guys. They would meet together, and when they got within a mile of the toll bridge at Gandy, they would stop the car, and most of them would crawl in the trunk. And because it was, I think, 50 cents a car and 10 cents per passenger, something like that. So they would all hide in their to the trunk until they got across the bridge, trying to save a buck. And those, of course, that was another story. But we lived here for 4 years, I guess, and then moved after the war. My father came back. He was shot up pretty badly in, I think, in Guam or Saipan. And we moved, and he took up his profession as a forester, and we moved up to Louisville, Kentucky, where I finished school. But I spent the 7th and 8th grade and the first 2 years of high school here on the islands, which was it was a different island today than it was then. Gulf Boulevard was a two-way street. It was paved. Sunset Beach, the main street was paved, but none of the side streets. They were all dirt streets back then. And we went to school by school bus, except on Sunset Beach they had a station wagon that ran down Sunset Beach and back to pick up maybe 2 students and brought them up to Gulf Boulevard to catch the bus there. That was before Capri, before Paradise Island, before any of the other islands, but this one, they were all dredged up during that time.
Can you peg a year on it? Time?
I guess that was, they must start dredging those in 43. I guess 1943 they began to dredge the islands up. But up to then it was pretty much a wilderness. There was some island there. They just made them larger. Because we spent a lot of time on the water. My closest friend then was a boy named Charlie Clymer, whose family owned a fishing fleet at Johns Pass. They ran commercial boats, and later after the war they ran the party boats out of there. And Charlie and I both worked on his family's boats, commercial and charter fishing. And we spent a lot of time on the waterways back here because he always had a little boat, and my brother and I bought a little boat. And we spent a lot of time exploring the islands and hunting on the islands. I've hunted rattlesnakes on Rattlesnake Island, which is, what's that today, Capri?
Yeah, I believe so.
We were always going to sell our rattlesnakes. It was a processing plant in Tampa. In fact, it was called Rattlesnake, Florida, where they processed rattlesnake meat. And we were always going to take our catch over there and sell it, but we never got that far. Trapped coons on the island. We used to go out there with other little coon traps and catch coons and shoot rabbits, and we cut Christmas trees and sold them here on the island at Christmas time. And we camped out. We always had a hut built somewhere on one of the islands where we camped out overnight. We'd take our guns or borrow our parents' guns, and we'd many times go down to the shoreline. And there were so many birds then. There was just millions and millions of birds that flocked, because those were basically bird islands. There were no people out there. And at night the birds would fly by the billions, it seemed, over the islands where they spent the night. And they'd be just billions of gulls and pelicans and all. And we would sit there and shoot at the birds as they came over. I suppose it was against the law, but it seemed a fun thing to do at the
Little
time.
hunters, huh?
Maybe not then.
A fun thing to do at the time.
Boys will be boys.
Boys will be boys. We fished a lot. Johns Pass was great fishing. I know my brother and I went out in Johns Pass one time and caught 125 pounds of trout in one afternoon and sold them to a restaurant. We used to go over on, it's a little island right off of Johns Pass called Woody's Island. I don't even think it's a separate island now. It may be. There may be a bridge going over there to the big condominium there, but off of Woody's Island was all seagrass, and we would go there and catch scallops. And we were always going to sell the scallops. That was our plan. We had boxes with glass bottoms, and you could wade in water about this deep and look through the bottom of the box, pick up the scallops and drop them in your box till you had a small hole to see through, then you dump them back at the boat and start it. We never got in with a scallop. We'd get maybe a bushel of them and say, well, let's eat a couple of them. And we'd sit there and boat and eat all the scallops that we caught. We never got to sell one.
Eat them raw.
Eat them raw. They're delicious.
Wow.
I still like them raw. If there's no scallops out there now, that's all gone. The seagrass is gone. There was Indian mounds out there. We used to go out and dig on the Indian mounds. In fact, some years back, when Walter Stubbs was mayor, they asked me to come down to the City Hall here. They got a picture somewhere in the lobby of what the Capri and Paradise and those islands looked like before development. And could I pick out where the Indian mounds were? I was at a commission meeting one night, and they apparently had gotten some kind of edict from Tallahassee that we had to protect our Indian mounds. And the commission was saying this doesn't mean anything to us because we don't have any Indian mounds.
Okay.
We used to go over there and dig in those mounds. The only thing I ever found were pottery shards and a few teeth. And I don't know what I kept those teeth for years, and I don't know what happened to them. I've since lost them. I understand there was one skull found by Richard Harding, whose family lived over here on the bay, and Richard took it in and donated it to St. Pete High, and they may still have that one skull, if that was a true story. Richard's gone now, so there's no way to verify that. Gosh, no. The old man had a little fishing village of its own back. He rented boats and he took people fishing in the bay.
Now, where was that?
In the kitchen, we used to call it, right?
In the kitchen.
In the kitchen, the first protected area inside the pass. is the
Yeah,
kitchen,
that was
right?
called the kitchen. That
Yeah.
that whole pass back there was called the kitchen.
Right. I remember seeing him there patching nets.
Right,
The old wallet nets.
He could weave the cast nets. He taught my brother to weave cast nets, and I think he weaved one. I never learned that trade. We kept our little boat. We had a little boat we called the Genie Y that we kept there. It was a little Palmer 5-horse. I can't remember. You had to turn a crank to start it. It was a putt-putt, and had a little cabin. We kept it for years and years. We bought it together for $200. I think we sold it for $200. Should have kept that boat. We explored all the islands at that time.
How about other kids you might know that was raised out here?
Nobody's left.
How about old Leon? Did you run into Leon back then? Or
Leon
he came
was
later?
one of about 4 children. It was Leon and Wayne
Lum was
and
one.
Lum, and there was one older boy that was in the service. And Wayne and I were the best of friends. His father ran a little, he rented boats and he rented rods and reels,
On
and
the dock there.
right there at Johns Pass, on this side of Johns Pass, where, what's the name of the operations in there now?
John's Pass Marina.
The restaurant.
Oh, Gators?
Gators, all
Yeah.
that. He owned all that, or owned it or leased it.
Okay.
and we always had access to boats. And I remember Wayne and I took a couple of his dad's fishing rods up on the bridge one day, and we tied a garbage can lid to the line and let it down into the pass. And then when the current caught it, we'd reel back on the thing, and the pole would bend, and cars would stop, and people would come over. And of course, the lid is.
You put on a show.
We'd stop. Buses would stop to see what the heck we had on the line. We always found an opportunity.
That's why kids entertain themselves. They didn't have video and
Click off the drag,
Like trying to
and
gate.
lose the fish at the last moment to the groans of everybody concerned. My buddy Charlie and I, it was the old bridge, and we climbed down on it one day with a Jewfish tackle. They're not called Jewfish anymore, they're called Goliath grouper. But back then they were Jewfish. And they hung around the pass. They got huge. They got 200 and 300 pounds. And around Pilings was a place to catch them. Charlie and I crawled down on the fins to go out, let the boats through the pass with a Jewfish tackle and a mullet on the hook. Hooks were this big and a rope that big for a line. And then we were going to catch a Jewfish. We were sitting down there smoking cigarettes, had the line tied to the Pilings, and just generally wasting time, when all of a sudden the line started trailing out. We said, oh my God, we got something. So we hooked a tarpon.
oh,
We hooked a 100-pound, it ended up being about a 102-pound tarpon. And we were trying to pull the slack out of the line. The tarpon jumped one last time and hit itself against the piling and stunned it. It just came up the top floating, and we drug it in and threw the end of the rope to people up on the bridge, and they pulled the tarpon up. And the press came out to interview us, and we told how the tarpon jumped 6 times and how we fought it for an hour and a half, all of which was not true.
just jumped up and knocked himself out.
No, I still got the picture in the paper, I think, and I've still got one scale out of the tarpon, which is about that big. I still got that at home, that tarpon. Then we call it, the fishing was different then. I worked on the commercial boats with Charlie's father, Francis, and his uncle Don. And back then we would go out 2 and 3 days. At that time you had to average 1,000 pounds a day to make expenses. So grouper were plenty back then. One day I made a penny a pound as a helper on the boat. Every pound of fish was caught, I got a penny, whether I caught it or who caught it. So if we got 1,000 pounds, I made $10. We went out one day and caught 5,200 pounds, came back the same day, and I made $52.
Good day.
Spent it that night. Fishermen haven't changed. Doing the same thing. Make what you spend what you make. So those were, as I say, fishing now, if they go out for 3 days and get 500 pounds, I understand it's quite a trip. We used to get stone crabs out there. We run maybe 20 or 30 traps at stone crab season. Charlie's family owned a little boat they called the Mailman. They didn't use it for fishing, it was just a fun boat. It was about a 20-foot high-powered boat, and Charlie and I would take that out, and we'd run everybody's traps. If there were 5 crabs, we'd take 2 of them. If there were 6 crabs, we'd take 3 of them. We never got caught. We always had crabs to take home. And one time during the year, the climbers would get together and cook a big pot full of crabs, and anybody that came by could stop and have free stone crabs. It was just something they did every year because the crabs were plentiful too. Not like it is today. Gee, what else can I tell you?
Well, what were some of the infamous places along the path that you spent your money on, perhaps?
There were
Was
none.
it Dick and Millie's or something?
There were none along the pass.
No? Okay.
That was the old bridge. We used to dive off of. We'd climb up on the bridge tender's control tower there and dive off of it into the bridge. Now, of course, it was a much lower bridge than it is now. But we swam there all the time. My brother one time said, I can swim across this pass on the outgoing tide. We said, Paul, you can't do it. He said, yeah, I think I can. If I start right here at the bridge, I should hit land at the point. Paul, you can't do it. He said, yes, I can. So he went and dove in the water, and the tide blew him out the pass. we got one of Charlie's climbers' boats, and we made a little mailman. We went out there, we picked him off a sea buoy. He was cut all up in particles. Couldn't swim that pass, still can't.
Lucky to survive.
Lucky to survive it, probably.
Really? Wow. That was your brother?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Did the old bridge get stuck a lot, or,
I don't recall it ever getting stuck, but
Yeah.
we never went through it.
yeah,
Working for the climbers, we were on the Gulf side, so we never had to go through the bridge. We exited out from there. It was more or less a fishing village then. Jack's Boat Basin, I don't know what they call it now. Jack's Boat Basin's gone. There's all condominiums in there now. And Snug Harbor above it, it was all fishing boats, charter boats.
So you catch blue crab and stuff?
Blue crab were plenty of them, but we never seen to bother with them. We used to catch shrimp at night. We'd take a rowboat. We'd take two boats, two little rowboats. We'd row out there at John's Pass and tie one to a piling, and then row the other one back during the daytime. At night, then we'd take the boat, go back out there, and get aboard the first we tied to the piling with kerosene lanterns, and put them on the bow of the boat, and then dip shrimp on the outgoing tide. And you could catch, easy 1,000 shrimp a night, just dipping them. And we got, I don't know, a penny a piece, I think. I think a penny a piece for the shrimp. And they were shrimp they sold for bait. My brother got a job one time on a shrimp boat on this side of John's Pass. I forget who owned the property then. We drug nets out in the bay for shrimp. And again, we got a penny a piece for them. And we get 5,000-6,000 shrimp a night, which we brought back and got a penny a piece, which was big money back then. All those shrimp flats are since been dredged up. I don't guess there's any seaweed out there anymore. But yeah, fishing was good. Shrimping was good. Crabbing was good. Those days are gone.
Did you do like any floundering and spearing or anything like that?
Yeah, we'd flounder fish at night. You could go along with a kerosene lantern and a gig, and the flounder would come in at night and lay in the sand close to shore, which I don't think happens much anymore.
I don't think anybody looks for them anymore.
I tried once. All I saw were stingrays, but yeah, you could gig flounder at night all along the beaches, and we'd do occasionally. We'd do that. We had a hurricane in the late 40s, and maybe it must have been late 40s, early 50s. I came back down here after I moved away. I'd come back down to Summers and worked with the climbers on the boats. And it may have been the early 50s. We had a hurricane, and we thought we better leave the island. And two of Charlie's classmates, two girls, were going to go to school in Birmingham, to nursing school. So we said, well, we'll drive you there and we'll abandon the island. So the four of us took off for Birmingham. When we got back, the hurricane had hit, and West Gulf Boulevard was completely destroyed. Chunks of it were set completely up on end. Parts of the road were completely destroyed. What Caddies now went by a different name then. I can't think what it was. But he rode it up under Caddies to where you could walk under there and reach up and touch the floor.
Wow.
So
Kind of like the old penguin, huh? You used to
yeah, it was
do that.
completely gone, completely washed away. And I say the road was completely disrupted with pieces standing up on end and whatever. So that was some serious erosion. And will it happen again? Probably. Hopefully not in my lifetime.
Do you remember actually there being a stream across the entire peninsula at West Gulf? I talked to one guy and he said
There was a stream of water that cut across there somewhere probably around 82nd Avenue.
Sunset Beach, yeah.
But they filled it full of tires and car bodies and junk and whatever and filled it back in. But that was, I think, prior to me moving here. I understand it still causes trouble when they try to drive pilings or something. They still might hit some. Wayne Atkinson and his family, his daddy's name was Wayne as well.
Right.
Blackie Richardson, who's
Well, that's the name I hadn't heard before, Blackie Richardson.
Blackie's gone too, I think.
What did he do?
I can't remember what Blackie's family did. I think he worked as a grocer at a grocery store or something.
Well, he was your buddy or
He was a
age?
buddy, yeah, he was our
Hung with
age.
you and Charlie and stuff?
Yeah, I can remember Blackie and I cut school one day. We were freshmen at St. Pete High. We thought it'd be fun to cut school. And we found we didn't have anything to do, so we found our way into St. Petersburg and went over to the school and kind of hid in the woods behind, wishing the hell we hadn't cut, you know.
Wondering what to do, huh?
What are we gonna do? Why are we gonna
Where are we gonna get lunch?
Were you on the island when Sunset Beach was its own municipality?
It wasn't incorporated. We didn't have a mayor, but we did have a police chief, and the police chief lived in the Stone House.
Uh-huh.
And he had a daughter that was one of our classmates. In fact, I smoked my first cigarette, me and his daughter and Charlie Clymer upstairs in the Stone House.
Where's the Stone House?
Yeah, it's right at John's Pass.
The one at John's Pass?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
okay, all right.
That's where I smoked my first cigarette, with the police chief's daughter.
Remember what his name was?
No, I
Gene,
can't
it wasn't
remember.
Gene Marshall, I guess.
Can't remember.
'Cause he
Can't
was-
remember. I know we used to, back then, the Don Cesar was a hospital for what at that time they called shell shock cases.
Right, right.
Soldiers came back in, they got another name for it now. But these guys have been through a lot. And we would try to hitchhike up there because we could buy cigarettes we could get the soldiers to buy cigarettes for us for 9 cents a pack. So we'd take 50 cents, go up there and buy as many cigarettes because we all smoked. We were 11, 12 years old. It was a cool thing to do. We'd try to hitchhike up there, but there wasn't any traffic. You couldn't get a ride. There was no cars. We would walk from John's Pass to the Don Cesar and never see a car
Wow.
because there wasn't anybody coming. We were going to hitchhike up.
All for a cigarette.
All for a cigarette, but no cars ever came. You could have slept in the middle of John's Gulf Boulevard at that point in time. There was no traffic. Of course, then you had to walk back too.
When did you wind up on Sunset Beach? On that, where you are now?
Well, my father retired in about 1950, I think, from his job in Kentucky as a forester. He had a buddy who was in the service with him that called him, who had come down here to make his home, and he called my father and said, you're retired, you're going to retire, there's a home down here for sale on Sunset Beach that I think y'all might be interested in. So my dad called and bought the home over the phone, sight unseen, for $5,000. My wife and I own that home today. It's on 91st Avenue, 137 91st Avenue. Bought that home for $5,000 on the telephone. So he moved down here when he retired. Decided he would like to be a fishing guide. He always loved to fish. So he bought a boat and he tried that for a while and the engine broke down. He couldn't afford to fix it. So then he went to work for up at Mary's Pier, and he ran a guide boat out of there over to the islands and up the Manatee River and back. So he was the first one after the war to come down and make his home. So that kind of attracted my wife and I. We retired. We like to come down there too. We bought a home just below him there. Dr. Ivy owned the home. It's the biggest lot on Sunset Beach. It's almost an acre of land. And my mother lived next door. And she called me and said, Mrs. Ivy wants to sell her home. And would you be interested? I said, probably not. I don't think I can afford it. Got 3 kids in school. And, don't think I could. Find out what she wants for it. She wanted $19,000 for it. It was almost an acre of land on the water. I said, oh my God. I said, wow. She has no idea what it's worth. So we bought that place we stole it basically. And so she lived to be another 6 months and died, had no relatives, no us. So she died a wealthy woman. We ended up with a beautiful piece of land, which we still own today. My mother's home was next door, which we own now too, and a couple other properties. So we made our home down there, and that's how it all started.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Good story. Well, now, did you ever go to the old theater over there, the Skyview Drive-In Theater? Was that up and running when you were here? Or no?
No.
Okay. And the beach theater at St. Pete Beach, I
The
guess?
Beach Theater was here.
Yeah.
It was still here. It was there then.
Yeah.
It was been in business for a while. That part of the beach was pretty well settled right there at that little place. But
Yeah.
from there up to the Don Cesar was pretty much all vacant land. And all Madeira Beach was pretty much all vacant land.
How about the end of Sunset Beach, where the mansions are, Larry? Did you ever go down there as a kid? It was all woods back then.
Not as a kid, but before the mansions was there, our kids, we had moved back to Florida. All our kids learned to swim down there. That was all vacant land. So it belonged to Admiral Farragut Academy back then. They sold it off. We would go down there and the kids all learned to swim down that point. It was all vacant.
You remember when it was blocked, when the pass got
I
blocked?
remember when the pass got
When
blocked.
Blind Pass was blocked?
It filled over with sand and silt, and there was no, and the water began to get stagnant all up through there. A group of us met down at the end of the pass with little sand shovels
Shovel
and
Brigade?
pails, and we dug a little channel across it to make a point.
You didn't have a permit for that,
We
did
didn't have a
you?
permit to make a point and to get the attention of the press, and they
We
would
didn't get that state dredging fill permit.
get that dredging permit to get bailed out. So yeah, it
But you
filled.
opened it up.
We yeah, by about a path about that wide to it. Yeah, we did that.
And then it went ahead and opened itself up at that
No,
point, didn't it?
no.
Oh, it didn't work.
The Corps of Engineers
Oh.
did come in and finally open it up for us.
But followed your example, I
It
guess.
made a point in the press. I'd
Right,
say.
right.
We got our pictures in the press.
Well, what do you think of Treasure Island today, kind of thing, compared to what it was when we were growing up?
You know, I kind of miss like it was. If I had, it'll
Me
never
too.
be. You know, you'd like to go back to where it was, but it's a lost paradise.
We hope you enjoyed the history and the tales of Treasure Island. There's more to come. We have over 57 hours of the tales of Treasure Island. So as soon as we can get them to you, we will. Thanks for watching Tales of Treasure Island.